Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News, and we have a Kaitlyn Bristowe video. Just when you think it's quiet out there, Kaitlyn Bristowe gives us 17 videos in a row, so you can thank her for this. Well, Ben Higgins calls out Kaitlyn on his podcast, the Almost Famous podcast. But hold on a second. He's friends with Kaitlyn, and he says everything he said publicly he would have told her. It's, it's critical, but it's not terrible compared to some of the comments that are online. I think he's missing the point. I think a lot of people have missed my point, which is not that what Kaitlyn Bristowe said was the right thing to say. My point all along has been, look, people say things off the cuff. Sometimes you regret it afterwards. When it's on a podcast and everyone clips it up, it lives on forever. That's the world we live in. The alternative is to just be so censored you never say anything, and I don't want to live in that world. I don't. So anyhow, that's my thought, but because a lot of people will sort of go, well, she shouldn't have said this. And look, hey, good pal Reality Steve, love him. Him and I could probably debate this all day long because we probably see it from different sides, right? Where he goes, look, she mentioned that, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back a couple videos, but Kaitlyn Bristowe mentioned that she received some hate from Tayshia after she texted Tayshia that she was dating Zach. Now, she didn't use names, but we all know what's going on. And it turns out Zach DM'd Kaitlyn, and I guess Kaitlyn might have DM'd Tayshia before she ever met Zach. I don't really know the exact boundaries there. It doesn't really matter for the sake. And she was expecting Tayshia to be like, respond however, but Tayshia goes, hey, I always knew you were a bad person. And then Kaitlyn's like, whoa, geez. Now, Kaitlyn will tell you, hey, I actually probably would have acted the same way. So Kaitlyn at least has the understanding of the type of character she is, which is that, I'm a ride or die person. I kind of, I'm reactionary. I'm that way too. So Kaitlyn can understand Tayshia's point of view. I wonder if Tayshia could understand Kaitlyn's. And you might say, well, what point of view is that? She stole, she swooped in and went after her man. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. But then the real hate from the internet comes in when Kaitlyn says, I should have sent her a photo of me sucking his dick. Now, that's a joke that didn't happen as far as we know, right? It's a sort of aside. That's what we call it. Aside, a quip, as it were. I guess people don't want her making quips. And it's like, sorry, like I've said all along, you can hate Kaitlyn Bristowe all you want, but that's how she makes her money. She makes her money by making quips. I make my money by digressing. You might say, Dave, I hate the way your ADHD mind works and it's so annoying. And it's okay, sure. Okay, fine. But that's how I make my money off of long form content where I just tell you my thoughts. Sometimes I don't articulate them great. Every once in a while, I'll offer an apology if I regret the way that something came out. Kaitlyn did apologize to her Off the Vine community. But again, I don't think she owes anybody an apology for, saying a thought that she had, an intrusive thought that it might be. So here's what Ben Higgins has to say. Let's just go listen. I got several clips to play for you.
Really covering
the headline.
All headlines, like going across news stations, all of Instagram, every single thing I pull up, it's Twitter, it's Kaitlyn Bristowe. And I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I want to hear yours first, though. Kaitlyn Bristowe insinuates she reached out to Tayshia Adams after going on a date with Zach Clark. Now, here's the deal. To say this headline is to make assumptions, because Kaitlyn does do this interview that Ashley will tell us about. She doesn't really say Tayshia's name, but let's be clear. It's very clear to everybody she's talking about Tayshia. So, Ashley, take it away.
So, on Sunday, an episode of the Betches podcast, You Up, was released. And Kaitlyn said, I went on a date with someone from the franchise and I reached out to the girl that he used to be with.
Right.
She and I hadn't talked in months. And no, we're not friends. We probably look like friends on the outside, but we're not. That's what makes it seem like it's Tayshia.
Is that?
No, we know it's Tayshia. And by the way, that's exactly, I'm sure, how their relationship was. You co-hosted with someone, oh my gosh, we're besties. And you might say, how is it possible to act that way with someone that you don't even like? I'm sorry. I've been to a couple brunches in my day. I've seen women and men look each other dead in the eye. Oh my gosh, how are you? And the second they go to the bathroom, that person sucks, right? I've seen it all the time. And I'm not saying that that's what their relationship was. I'm saying work relationships. They were being paid to be on location to host The Bachelorette. In between scenes, which might give you 3-4 hours of, they might have 3-4 days in a row where they're not needed, right? They're peeking through a few bushes. They're being used lightly. They have a lot of free time. So they do some TikTok videos. Tayshia promotes Kaitlyn's scrunchy line. line. Sure, fine. Are they, going to each other's, birthday parties? Are they doing all these things? No, that's not the case.
At what makes it seem like it's Tayshia.
Okay, there's lots of things that makes it seem like it's Tayshia. Because we all kind of know, even though it's not out there, like they haven't released this information, but like that Zach and Kaitlyn have had something in the past, currently have something going on romantically.
Long distance.
But neither of them have ever confirmed it. So there's step number one. It's probably a recent story. It's step number two, and it being probably Tayshia. And then what I'm saying here is that it looks like we're friends, but we're not. And that would be because the two of them hosted the show together, but like obviously they were just work friends.
Yes. And
not real friends or coworkers, as you'd want to call it, not real friends. And then what happens else in the situation that she's talking about on the podcast is she goes, I asked, what the girls' thoughts were, and
weird
she
echo.
Didn't text reply me back. She called me and she said, "You're a bad person." And
by the way, the reason the phone call happens, this is the same reason Nick Viall called me. People like to talk on the phone because in a lot of states it's illegal to record phone calls, but you just expect most people won't. But screen grabs, I mean, imagine if Kaitlyn had a screen grab of Tayshia saying that to her, that would cut. She doesn't have that evidence.
This and your true colors are showing now. So obviously the girl did not support Kaitlyn pursuing anything with the guy who reached out to her.
And as I've said, and I think the host Jordana said, look, I think it's fine to feel those feelings and it's fine to call. Anybody can do whatever they want. I think in most cases, you don't make that phone call. You take the high road. You're with somebody else. You go, all right, that person's an effing B. And then you go talk trash about them to all your friends privately. I'm not saying one's a better thing to do. I'm just surprised Tayshia who picks up the phone? Who calls anybody?
Whoever this guy might be from Bachelor Nation. And that is the story that Kaitlyn told on this podcast. And of course, everybody is buzzing because it seems as if it's like kind of step one in Kaitlyn and Zach perhaps becoming a public couple. I don't know. Maybe not. Because if she wasn't comfortable with them being a public couple, I don't think she would have.
So Ashley, God bless her, we love Ashley, thinks this might be a calculated soft launch.
Told this story, or soon to be a public couple. I don't know. Ben, what is your take on this?
Well, part of it is my take. I mean, that's the big question because there's a lot to this that I think we can have takes on.
Please.
Like, what part do you want my necessarily opinion on? Because we've made it no secret here, and I will never back down on this. I care a lot about Kaitlyn Bristowe. I think she is somebody that will always have a part of my life, no matter if it's really far distance or not. Like, she's somebody that obviously not only because she was the Bachelorette on this season, but because I've gotten to know her outside of it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they had a little spiff recently where he did a podcast with Jason Tartick, and it really made Kaitlyn mad. We'll go back to Ben Higgins in a second, but I want to go over what Kaitlyn actually said.
Same thing that she did.
Not the I should have sent him a photo of me sucking his dick, but the moment where she said, "Hey, I'm that same kind of gal."
Especially because she had a day to think about it. So I sent the text and the next day she called. And I am the type of person, I react with big emotions. I probably would have done the same thing that she did in the moment. But then I would have hung up and I would have said, ooh, that was not a reasonable reaction. Yeah. And I would have thought it through and I would have probably talked to my therapist about it. I saw that hat. Hold on, let me ask my therapist. And
I got a passive aggressive text from Kaitlyn Bristowe once and I almost respected it. I was like, that means she sees me as her friend. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? I'm used to it because I get them from my sister a lot.
I would probably do that. And then I would probably call back and say, like, you know what? I apologize for the way I spoke to you. It doesn't feel good that you're doing this. But like at the end of the day, I am happy. And I thank you for giving me a heads up. I would have.
And that never happened.
No,
I've always known you were a bad person.
Yeah,
and
which
wow.
is again,
which
again, it made me be like, I knew we weren't friends. Like I actually knew.
So this confirms to Kaitlyn that they weren't friends, and it confirms to Tayshia that Kaitlyn's a bad person. I think we're losing sight of the fact that Tayshia said this confirms I thought you were a bad person. That's heavy to me. I think that's a different weight to different people, but to me, that's heavy.
She didn't really actually like me in the first place. So I just, but that just goes, this is all to say for this person, all I ever expect from people is a heads up. And if these are your good friends, I just think saying like, hey, it would probably make you uncomfortable if I go to dinner. Like, I just feel like talking it through with anybody is going to solve some problem.
It's so true. I remember, like I've said this already, but I'll dive deeper. When I got invited to do Jason Tartick's podcast, which still hasn't worked out, I don't know why, but when I got invited to do it, I texted Kaitlyn and I said, hey, just so you know, because I value you and the platform you've provided me and this and that, but I was offered Jason's podcast. She was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for like running that by me. She was like, I don't owe Kaitlyn Bristowe a text conversation, but it helps out because I get that mindset because I'm that same person where I get that mindset where she goes, now if she sees that I'm on Jason's podcast, she'll go, well, Dave did let me know, just a friendly heads up. So it's very similar in this point where Kaitlyn doesn't owe Tayshia that, but she goes, look, you're going to find out, there's going to be rumors, things are going to come out. I just want to let you know, like I'm going to be seeing this guy, whatever.
There's two things that...
All right, so anyway, let's go back to what Ben has to say. And then here we go.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh, I forgot a critical element of the podcast episode.
Well, keep going then.
So she said, the girl said, you're a bad person in reference to Kaitlyn. And then Kaitlyn got so mad at that comment that she said, that made me really want to send her a picture of me.
Yeah. I'd break it down like this. Again, I think Kaitlyn has one of the most extremely loyal hearts, or like characters. I won't say hearts. I don't know what that means. She is extremely loyal.
Good way to put it.
Until you cross her. And I think Kaitlyn has easily crossed. And I'm saying this like I would say it to Kaitlyn. She gets crossed really quickly instead of taking the time to like, wade through these waters and push some things aside that would be offensive and probably be like, hey, yeah, Tayshia, like that comment hurts me.
So what he's saying is Kaitlyn sets the bar high for her friends. And while they weren't friends, she felt like she didn't get that earned response.
I'm no longer really respecting your opinion in this relationship and just pushing that aside. That still sits with her because Tayshia crossed her. And as a result, Kaitlyn is going to make sure that somebody knows that Tayshia crossed her. I don't think that's a healthy way to live life.
So Ben Higgins is saying the way Kaitlyn lives her life isn't healthy. I think they're almost overanalyzing the moment, right? Anyone can feel defensive. That's fine. I don't think Kaitlyn harbors anger towards Tayshia so much as she was having a conversation with a podcast and a relevant moment came up where she shared a story. If you, not that they write notes beforehand, but if there were notes about what Kaitlyn wanted to talk about, this wasn't gonna come up. This wasn't a soft launch. This was, oh yeah, by the way, this happened. And the thing I've tried to explain to people, which they are having a hard time relating to me, which is fair because, a lot of people aren't podcast hosts, or podcast whatever. But what I'm trying to explain to people are comments like this, and I appreciate these comments. I appreciate all the fine people. Usually I mirror your thoughts in many ways, but with this one, I can't seem to offend your thinking. I often find you rational and well-spoken. Thank you. But unfortunately here I have to disagree. That's okay. Kaitlyn is putting out a very private conversation, knowing fully well that the audience is going to figure out who it was. She may not have mentioned Tayshia by name, but we can sure know she knew the audience would figure it out. All those things are true. All those things are true that this was going to cause controversy, but I reject the premise that it was premeditated. That's where I stand. I go, it wasn't premeditated. Should she have shared it? I'll put it this way. She doesn't benefit from this. She didn't share it on her podcast. She's only gotten hate. She's only going to lose a small amount of audience from this. She doesn't benefit at all from this. But I'm just surprised. It feels to me, I'm not insulting anybody's intelligence. It feels to me that I'm here trying to have a bigger conversation about, like, look, sometimes you step in shit and audiences go, you should have not to step in that shit. You're always stepping shit. That's true. Kaitlyn Bristowe does step in her shit a lot. That's probably due to her personality type. And people say, well, shouldn't she know better by now? She's almost 40. Okay. Are we supposed to just change our personality types? No. As far as dealing with the Bachelor Nation crowd, Kaitlyn Bristowe can come off abrasive. I don't think that makes her unhealthy. Ben has to remember, she's having a conversation with two people here. Yes, it's published and everyone's going to know about it, but that's not what she's thinking in the moment. I relate this all the time to stand-up comedy, where you might things might go sideways on stage. And by that, I mean, you might be having a weird set and then you try to roast someone in the crowd, but people like the person in the crowd more than you, and you become the bad guy and you look like an asshole. And it's like, why did you self-sabotage on stage? I was just trying to make people laugh. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to. Well, don't you know better? This person, whatever. I remember I did crowd work with a guy I've done it several times with guys that are firemen. You can't mess with firemen. Everyone loves a fireman. You know what I mean? Like they're good, hardworking people. It's apolitical. We love to put out fires. You learn your lessons about what to avoid. And Kaitlyn stepped into a trap here. I'm just not willing to be like, she's the worst person ever because she stepped into a trap. That's me. I don't think this is unhealthy. Does she have unhealthy habits about caring what audiences think? As much as anybody else does. I
don't think that ends anywhere well, unless you're making a headline. And this becomes a headline. And headlines work in this world.
There's no way she didn't think this would become a headline.
No way. Kaitlyn's really smart.
They're wrong. Guys, she's not thinking about headlines. She's making Jared Freed laugh. You guys are so wrong on this. Look, the brain doesn't multitask that way. Sure, sometimes in an interview you go, oh, I better avoid that one. But in that boom, boom moment, you're not thinking. Let's go to the 20-minute mark here. So I reject their premise, and I would respectfully, I reject their premise that she knew what she was doing. She's not on the podcast to go sell a book. Whenever you write a book, you add some thirsty moments. This is the part that I've never told before. Whatever stupid things. She's not doing that. There is no monetary reason here for her to be stepping in this shit. She just stepped in it. Period. Done.
Eat in the South.
All right, so then they have a commercial, no surprises, and let's get to the next clip.
By the New York Times Wirecutter.
All right, I don't know when it's going to come.
Hundreds of thousands.
There it is.
Right
More
decision.
clips.
I don't. I wouldn't stand behind that and say, Kaitlyn, you did the right thing by telling the world that this is how.
All right, so he says it's not the right decision.
They're wrong for telling his story. Yeah, probably. I would.
All right, so they're saying she's in the wrong for telling the story, and I go, look, it's not a question about who's right or who's wrong. Are you in the wrong to step in shit? Yeah, you got your shoes are dirty now. It's and again, is telling this story. You might say, well, Dave, it's more like she saw that there was shit there and she still stepped in it, or she tried to thread a needle and she didn't. Now, you want to call that wrong? Sure. She tried to thread a needle and she didn't. But by the way, she got a big laugh. A lot of people think it's funny, but it didn't play to the whole room.
And I'm okay if Kaitlyn sees this and reads this. I don't think that was the right decision. I don't. I wouldn't stand behind that and say, Kaitlyn, you did the right thing by telling the world that this is how it went down. You can tell your friends, you can tell your family, your confidants, whatever. Was it right to tell the world? Probably not, because what it's going to do is it's going to cause controversy.
Humor doesn't know morals in the moment. If it was a premeditated joke, that's a different subject here.
However, if Kaitlyn was prepared for the headlines and for the heat, then I don't know. Like, that's what she wanted. She prepared for it. She knew it. And like I said, Kaitlyn's really smart. And so I would be shocked if she was like, I'm going to say this and nobody's going to care. Like, I don't think Kaitlyn thinks that way.
You're telling me in the 3 seconds between deciding to tell a story and telling a story that these checklists are running down her head? I'm sorry. I don't care how smart you are. That's not the way the brain thinks. Done.
She doesn't. And so was this a mistake she made? I can't say that yet. She can't say that yet. We don't know how this plays out.
It's going to be fine. It's just going to blow over. It's just, she's just going to have to handle a lot of incoming opinions for the next week.
True.
Yeah. I don't know how Kaitlyn does with that. I mean, here's what Kaitlyn needs to know. Kaitlyn needs to know people love her, and they love her because of these moments.
Exactly. That's the most important thing, Ben, that you're hitting the nail on the head. Kaitlyn owns a mansion. She drives a G-Wagon. Maybe it's not a mansion. I don't know. She's got all these good things going for her because they love her opinions. With that, it's like saying, "Oh, we love the fish and chips. Kaitlyn serves the best fish and chips. She puts them in the fryer later, and she makes great fishes and chips." But, you know, the grease will burn her once in a while. You know, that's what it is. The grease burned her.
And she says some crazy stuff that makes you go, whoa, that's wild. I would never say that publicly. Does that mean it's right or wrong? I don't know. I'm not the one to judge that.
And by the way, Kaitlyn's really big at mirroring whoever she's talking to. So I remember when she had a conversation, which I criticized, where she was talking about, money's not everything, but she was talking to Kristen Cavallari about it. And Kristen Cavallari is clearly like super wealthy. They're both relatively very wealthy. And it's like, well, money's, but it's one of those things. If she was she mirrors the people she's talking to. Like that's her personality type. It probably has a lot to do with empathy. It has a lot to do with being ride or die, in that she wants people to live up to what she wants them to be as friends. And with the case of Tayshia, she didn't see her as a friend. She just said, "Hey, I'm going to do the right thing by letting you know." And she felt like the right thing in response would have been to be like, take it on the chin. You might disagree, but that's where she was at.
That, or even say that. Is it going to bring Tayshia into the picture again a little bit? But like Tayshia doesn't need to respond to this, right? Her response has already been given by how she, talked about the first time.
I wonder what Zach's response is.
That's the person. That's where I was getting. Is I think the person that puts in the weirdest position is Zach, because Zach maybe never asked for any of this, and Zach has been very private, kind of since the show, on everything he's done, except his mission. To alleviate people who, or to support people who are struggling with addiction. So that puts him in a weird space, but that's more of a Kaitlyn and Zach conversation than anybody else is.
He'll be fine.
So that's why I was insinuating before that this seems like it's almost like a soft launch. Because I don't know that.
What a wild way to do a soft launch.
Well,
yeah, there's no way it's a soft launch.
I don't think she would tell the story if they were not together.
So they just don't. I don't want to beat a dead horse. They don't understand here the off the cuff nature that some people have.
Now people need to know that. That's just like sometimes Kaitlyn says things that you're like, that's just like Kaitlyn. And is it right? I don't know. Again, you either like her or you don't. But that just felt like a moment where Kaitlyn was getting way too comfortable in the moment and said something that at the end of the day, she'll look back on and be like, I probably could have not said that.
So if I were with Ben, I would be congratulating him on that opinion. He has several opinions that I agree with and several that I disagree with. But I agree with the point that he says, yeah, she was probably just feeling very safe and in the moment. Let me tell you something. And then they go into it. I won't play anymore. You can go listen to it. They go into the idea that when they interview guests, sometimes the guest will ask them to take something out afterwards. This happens all the time. One of the best stories I ever heard from a guest was a threesome story. It was crazy. Oh my gosh, guys. It was nuts. No, I'm not going to tell the Patreon about it. You got to catch me at a live show. But it was wild. And then later on that night when they sobered up, they were like, hey, can you take that out? They were almost like, there's no way we were going to air that. And I was like, why did you say it on the camera? What are you doing? So I almost try to find out what people's blind spots are before interviewing them, just so I don't have to edit it out afterwards. It's so annoying. But you get that all the time. Later on, Ashley says, well, I don't want to share my opinions because I'm afraid to share them. And I'm like, Ashley, this is the first time you're afraid to share your opinions. My guess is Ashley that Ashley has a very critical opinion of Kaitlyn and just doesn't want to go there because, business reasons. And I understand that. But guys, who, let me ask you this. Who do you appreciate more? Somebody like me who's, and again, I guess it's a weird false dichotomy, but I'll put it this way. I'm A, supporting a friend, and B, realizing she didn't mean harm even if she caused it. And that's important to me. The scale of injustice has degrees. First degree, second degree, third degree. Was this premeditated or was this an act of defense or whatever? In the world of humor and in the world of Bachelor Nation, the scale at which Kaitlyn Bristowe committed a crime is like, yeah, she said something that maybe was the wrong thing to say, but she didn't mean it wasn't a premeditated vindictive thought. It was a joke that went sideways. Boom. All right. Serve 2 hours community service. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. That's how I feel. And if you listen, let me be quite honest with you. If you don't like me giving you my authentic take, that's your problem, because that's all I have. That's the only currency I have, is telling you what I think about things. I'll try my best to be impeccable with my word. I'll try my best to be graceful, and I'll try my best to feel all these other feelings, but I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm telling you right now, there are so many people out there that are telling you what you want to hear, not what they actually think. I hear it all the time from alumni and content creators alike. All the time. They want to read the room. They want to go in the comment section, see how people feel, and then they share their thoughts. I'm telling you right now, I think I'm the only one who's saying what Kaitlyn said, wasn't that bad, and I don't think she meant it in a bad way, and that means a lot in my book. That's where I stand. All right, folks, let me know what you think. I got more coming to you this afternoon on the podcast, The Rush Hour with Dave Neal. I'll have all your content, all your pop culture and entertainment news in one place. It's free. Have you subscribed yet? Link in the description. We'll talk to you then.